Good morning. Just a little kind of precursor. If you see me shifting or making unusual faces, I'm dealing with some pretty extreme sciatica pains these past couple of days. It ebbs and flows. This morning, I couldn't even sit down for even 5 seconds. So I've been doing kind of stretches for most of the morning just to kind of start loosening up. So that's what that is. So I finally finished watching Twin Peaks: The Return last night. I guess the best place to start, I kind of said this about, well, maybe that's not the best place to start. So along with guys like Jim Jarmusch, Werner Herzog, Errol Morris, Seijun Suzuki, to name just a few off the top of my head, David Lynch is kind of one of those directors that has had a huge impact on many people's lives, but I'm going to keep this to kind of me and my experiences. He's had a hell of an impact on my life. Just in the way of specifically how he's able to present ideas in such a loose format, basically creating an environment for you to kind of have this experience in, right? That's what it feels like to me. Sorry, digging over here. Creating this kind of world for you to have this experience in and kind of come away from it with your own sense of things. I mean, I find it interesting. Like I said, I just finished watching it last night, and this morning for a little bit, as I was lying around doing stretches and stuff, just kind of watching some opinion pieces on YouTube of theories that people have about it. Oh, good morning, Damien. How are you doing? Just some theories that people have about it. And this idea that there always needs to be answers to stuff is something that intrigues me. Anyway, everything art-wise that I've experienced that I find really resonates with me. There's kind of intent versus experience going on. You know what I mean? It's, for me, for the most part, experience kind of outweighs intent. Not all the time. Obviously, none of these, all of these things that I'm going to say to some degree are generalizations. Of course, I don't mean them right across the board. I don't mean every single instance that I have, it's about the experience. There's some things where the intent is just as powerful as what my experience is. I kind of have the day off today, Damien. I was just saying at the beginning before any viewers came, if you see me shifting and stuff, I'm kind of dealing with some fairly extreme sciatica pains the past couple of days. And I honestly, I couldn't sit down this morning. So when I went out to start my car, just the process of getting in my car was excruciating, to be totally blunt. So I've been kind of stretching it out. And now it actually hurts more to stand than it does to sit. Although it is getting a little annoying right now. So anyway, just to kind of go back to what I was saying, the intent versus experience thing. Good morning, Mass Panther. I think partially caused by the desk job. Absolutely. It's a shift in my life, right? I've always had physical jobs. I've always done stuff where I've been out working in a shop, working outside, doing stuff more physical. So since I started this job sitting at a desk, I am noticing changes, not only in my weight a little bit, but just in that specifically. this pain has kind of come from that. So I'm trying to find ways, looking at getting a stand-up desk, for example, one that I can sit and stand. You can adjust it. I'm trying to get out, even when I have to spend the day in the office, I'm trying to get out and go for long walks, like at lunchtime, you know, because I can do my work, some of my work from anywhere. I can do it on the cell phone, so I can walk around. Green tea, thank you very much. I'll give that a shot. Yeah, and it's true. Sitting at a computer all day does cause a lot of problems. And I mean, again, thankfully with my job, I don't have to sit at a computer all the time. I do have the ability to kind of get out of the office. But yeah, this most recent bout kind of came out of nowhere, as the first one did, just came out of nowhere and completely just kicked my ass, to be honest. A couple of days ago, it was excruciating. I think I couldn't really move for most of the day. Yeah, and today is kind of bordering on that. I'm going to go see my doctor. I've seen a doctor already about it. I have tried a little bit of yoga and stuff, yes, and that's something that I'm trying to incorporate more here at home. Trying to maintain a variety of stretches and kind of what are considered like yoga poses and stuff to help out and just to stretch things out. Anyway, I don't want to make this about my old man pains. First world problems. Just to kind of go back. So the experience of art itself is something that has outweighed a lot of other things when it comes to the way I approach. Even when it comes to music, when it comes to comics, some of the stuff that lasts with me the most are things where there's an experience attached to it. Yes, young men can have old man pains. Yes, absolutely right. Yeah, you're right. So it kind of leads me to, let's just talk very, very briefly. When I went to see Blade Runner, for example, the 2049, the movie itself is incredible. It's a really visually stunning movie. Considering it's a sequel that didn't have any business being made, it's this idea that, oh my goodness, sorry. Somehow Siri heard me and was speaking to me. Considering it's a sequel that had no intention of being made, not everything needs to have answers. It's fine having questions. The idea that we need answers to stuff at all times and can't sometimes just let things be and experience a moment or experience an experience. I know that sounds ridiculous, but so for me, Twin Peaks: The Return, it's never been something that I've craved. You know, yes, I've had a couple moments, especially early on when we saw the show. We watched it as it was originally being televised. At around that same time, just before that, probably a year or so before that, I can't remember. I'd have to look at like actual dates. Is when we kind of discovered David Lynch in general. We talked about the idea before about like the experience of Eraserhead for me and some of his early short films like The Grandmother and The Alphabet and stuff, and what impact that had on somebody living in kind of the north end of the city, kind of detached from everything in a suburb, and that experience of not only discovering the movie, discovering Movie Village, which is where we rented the movie from, discovering kind of that area of downtown. It was this whole sense of everything attached with me, of like this whole world just kind of completely opened up, where everything was kind of, I like Aerosmith, I like Kiss, this is what this is what that is, da 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 da. And again, I'm not by any means bashing any of those experiences. It's just you have this kind of idea of what art and music is. Then having this experience where you're opened up to like, holy shit, there's a guy like John Waters that exists out there making movies. There's a guy like David Lynch out there that makes these kind of movies. It's really just mind-blowing. So when we made that discovery, there was the announcement of, I think he had, the other show was called Off the Air. Is that what it was called as well too? That was very short-lived. But then when Twin Peaks came, it just kind of captured everybody. And the fact that it captured everybody made it even more of a thing of like, holy crap, what is this that we're experiencing on television? You're putting it onto a format, first of all, that hasn't really had stuff like that, especially stuff that's kind of caught on to that degree and that popularity, touching on all sorts of topics. Like if you want to just read it at a base level, you're seeing a movie or you're seeing a TV show about sexual abuse, right? So, and then if you want to go farther, there's all sorts of stuff. And that's what kind of struck me the most about Twin Peaks: The Return. I didn't really have any idea that I wanted to see a return, honestly. Sure, there was unanswered questions that I was curious about. I mean, the classic ending of season 2 with Cooper in the mirror, it's just, it lives with you, right? Those things live with you. Those moments live with you. And of course, once you get submerged into a world, there is that time period where you don't want it to end. You know, when I watched The Wire, for example, getting submerged into that world of The Wire, you don't want it to end, but it has to end, because if it goes on forever, it loses that part of what makes a thing is its kind of limited experience that you have with it. It doesn't go on forever. It's not like Saga, you know what I mean, where it just goes on and on and on and on. Again, I'm not saying a blanket term that anything like that is horrible and everything that's Lynch is perfect. Not even close, because I can appreciate both sides of everything. I try to experience both sides of everything and appreciate both sides of everything. It's just when it comes to something like Twin Peaks, that capsule, that time capsule, is a really great thing. And I guess that kind of ties in with the nostalgia elements that he was playing with, especially in The Return, which kind of leads me to The Return. So not knowing that it was something that I really wanted, when it was presented, the idea was like, of course I got to see this. Of course that's incredible. Of course I want to know what goes on. So I started watching it. I probably watched up to episode, I don't know, 12 or 13, something like that. And I just found parts of it really tedious to make it through. I just had no interest in parts of it. The slower moments, all the Dougie storyline, for the most part, what I found really dull and boring. So I kind of just left it alone. And I think part of that was because I myself fell into the same trap of, I'm going to watch this show. There's going to be answers. Things are going to be presented to me in a certain way. And I mean, I wasn't disappointed by the visuals that Lynch gives us. I mean, everybody talks about it, but episode 8 was just an incredible experience. Talking about experiences, that one was mind-bogglingly good. Because you're getting this voice of an artist. And I've talked about that many times in the past too. A lot of the stuff that resonates with me even more so is when you clearly are seeing or hearing the voice of the artist himself and his experiences. I should say his or her experiences. That's the stuff that resonates even more with me. So once I kind of took a break from it and got away from that idea of, this isn't about me. Again, like with a lot of things that we end up talking about in the comic community, especially, or maybe not especially, it seems like come up a lot in comic book community. This idea of taking these old characters and making sure you never change them, because now you're messing with me and my enjoyment of those characters, right? It's happened to me as well too. You know, I just had a conversation the other day about what I thought about the Daredevil TV shows. Did I hate them? No, I didn't hate them. Do I think they could have been way better? Yeah, of course, because just as everybody else thinks, the way that I see Daredevil is the only way to see it. And why didn't you do this? And, you know, like, so sometimes it is a battle with those kind of emotions and that kind of attachment. And that's kind of the danger of nostalgia, right? Like, it stops you from seeing anything else, and it stops you from having new experiences, and stops you from moving forward and embracing other things, right? So once I could kind of take a step back from that and realize that Lynch is going to give us something that Lynch wants to give us. He's never been a guy here, I made this movie for you, the fans. It's always been a very singular feeling for him. Just kind of a sidetrack to this, what you're asking, Damien, speaking of, especially what I'm speaking of now, I think a Deadman Spectre kind of thing would be fantastic for him, especially Deadman with this idea of being able to encompass other people's bodies and kind of be a personality within a body. You know, that might be kind of interesting. Something a little more along those lines. So once I got past that, I just kind of embraced the show for what it was, which to me it's a variety show, really. And there's so many nuggets throughout it. And that's the one thing I got from watching all these kind of theories on things today, was that he did an incredible job of presenting all of this information for you, and you just to completely take it in your own hands and create your own show is really what's happening. Of course, he has his commentary on stuff. And one of the things that stood out to my brother that also stood out to me was there was a number of scenes where you had groups of people looking and watching an event or watching something that was kind of framed as sort of a TV or a movie screen. There was a number of incidences of that. And then watching a video today, they were talking about the original Twin Peaks show, and something I'd kind of forgotten about was the soap opera that runs through it that a lot of the characters watch throughout that, and kind of as a vision of possibly what Twin Peaks could have become if it hadn't have gone into the hands of the people that did create it, you know what I mean? And then what Lynch did right off the top of Fire Walk with Me, with an axe destroying a TV and that sort of thing. There's all those kind of elements of spectator experiences coming into play, and acknowledging that there is a spectator, acknowledging that, almost like this breaking of the fourth wall, where you're acknowledging that I know that we exist on a screen. I know that we're characters being presented to you. There was moments again in the Twin Peaks Return, where characters were introduced by their real life names, you know, Eddie Vedder being one of them. I'm blanking on his real name, but he gives a performance in one of the later instances, and they introduce him by his real name, not as Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. So there's moments like that. So, I mean, that side of it is incredibly appealing, because you're just giving the reins to the viewer and going, here's all this stuff that's come to Lynch through transcendental meditation, has come to him through dreams, has come to him in moments of contemplation, wherever it comes from for him. And again, I can't stress enough, if you haven't seen The Art Life, the David Lynch documentary, The Art Life, it's highly, highly recommended, just to give you an insight into that. So where all this kind of stuff loses me a little bit is my own ideas of nostalgia. There's people that I know from high school that when I do see them, and it's not that often that I do, when I do see them, there is the sense with some of them that high school wasn't that great. I can't believe it. Do you remember that time we did this, this, and this, and this? And it's like, yeah, I remember it, but I don't want to relive it, because high school was shit. Teenagers suck. I'm an old man now, or an older man now. I don't care about that stuff. So it's my own relationship with some aspects of nostalgia. Is there nostalgia still existing in my life? Of course there is. There's still things that I like because they still kind of give that impact of when I was a child. But my relationship with nostalgia is that a lot of it is dull, and a lot of it is kind of like, why would I want to relive that? I'm not that person anymore. There's this detachment of a personality. It seems like another person. And all that kind of plays into the new Twin Peaks, which is why I kind of stopped watching it for a little bit, because some of those things were dull, and maybe some of those nostalgic elements, they just didn't resonate with me. Now, what that can kind of say as a commentary is interesting. I mean, Audrey Horne is a great example of that. Sherilyn Fenn, her character in Twin Peaks is great, and her final moment in Twin Peaks, I absolutely loved. I loved it. It really worked for me, because as I was watching the scene, all of these kind of real life dialogue of the character and her as a human being in this role, etc., started to kind of wrap around watching a show about a fictional character. And that's an incredible skill to be able to pull that off and kind of do it in a, I don't know, it didn't, nothing that Lynch seems to me is kind of cheesy or obvious. It's also one of the reasons why I really like David Lynch in general. When you have those moments, and I found a number of those moments in this new Twin Peaks, he's ramping up the sound design. He was responsible for all the sound design on the show. And he has been in many of his movies, like Eraserhead being the most notable. That, for me, again, the impact of that soundtrack was incredible. It introduced me to a whole world of ambient music and isolationist music, as it was called. The ability to kind of present an atmosphere and a moment where you literally do not know what is going to come or when it is going to come or if anything is going to come is incredible. That's absolutely incredible to be able to present a world like that where you cannot see what's going to come around the corner. You do not know if there's going to be a jump scare, because a lot of the time it's not going to be. It's just an old guy sitting in a gas station, eating his soup, looking outside, thinking about his life. Nothing is going to magically appear outside. It's just a moment in this guy's life where he is kind of grasping onto what he's doing with his life, you know. But the ability to transform all of those moments into something else is amazing. And that goes to show his talent with the medium itself, with writing itself, with the people that he chooses to be actors in his movies and TV shows, all of that stuff, his skilled hand at being able to kind of have those people collaborate with him, which again is why you see a lot of the same faces in his movies. If it's worked once, they're going to be on some similar wavelength. That's why he has them back. I'm not ignoring the comments. I just wanted to kind of continue that train of thought there while I had it going. So Damien is saying, I've really become hesitant to see adaptations of favorite comics or books or reboots of favorite TV shows. Yeah, and I mean, I can totally understand that, which is kind of ties in with what I was saying earlier about this, hey, let's see this Twin Peaks thing. There's no need to have all the answers. I don't want all the answers. So getting over that hump is definitely a thing for sure, and hoping that the person responsible for it is going to kind of make it their own in some case. Good morning, Samuel Trijos. Good morning, special person. How are you guys? Nostalgia is disturbing, yet I obviously experience it. When the reaching for the past overwhelms you emotionally, trying to make our life a loop instead of a one-way road. Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's exactly the kind of thing that he talks about, or that I believe is presented in this Twin Peaks: The Return, this kind of idea of this looping and not being able to let things go, and seeing different personality types within the characters, allowing you to then see different personality types in the real world and their interpretations of it is fascinating to me, because especially when it's people that you know and you've known for a good chunk of time and they react to it. And you can see their reactions, and you can see, even in myself, I can see my reactions to some of it, and I can see how I react to things in real life and how I deal with things in real life and things that are important to me in real life versus that are unimportant. And you can see this ability to pull out these personalities with people. And then Damien says, Lynch soundtracks are incredible. Hadn't realized he was so deeply involved, but it makes sense. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of even the music, he's put out a number of albums as well. He worked really closely with Angelo Badalamenti, who did the music for the original Twin Peaks, and then they did records together. But that kind of, like, when you think of that kind of slow, atmospheric, jazzy, that's Lynch sound. That's a Lynch sound. And then you hear all the kind of machinery and steam and ambience. That to me is a Lynch sound. And it again just kind of goes to show the impact that an artist can have on his work and how it can become this kind of singular vision. I I had the good fortune a couple of times to work with Guy Maddin here in town. If anybody knows movies, you know Guy Maddin. Maybe you don't. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Kind of an arty director who has kind of put Winnipeg on the map. He did a movie called My Winnipeg that kind of deals with fact versus fiction as far as the history of Winnipeg goes. Anyway, so he had this. I worked on a couple of short films of his. And the thing that kind of struck me the most about him, where I thought that he was that kind of an artist where he had control over every little detail, I was kind of disappointed to find out that that wasn't the case. On the experiences that I had working on his movies, he gave the reins to everybody else and kind of gave them a very basic kind of overview, very, very basic, but the interpretation and what it looked like was left up to the individual building the sets, designing the costumes, et cetera, et cetera. He wanted to let things happen and then come in and kind of experience the world along with anybody else who's later going to watch the movie, right? Whereas Lynch, I think, is the opposite of that. I mean, again, in the Art Life documentary, he talks about, Saddest Music in the World was one as well too. That's right, yeah. Where Lynch talks about, they show him kind of creating Eraserhead, and he did everything. He built the sets, he painted the floors, he painted the walls, he did the sound design, he built everything. So it was really, this was his vision. Obviously he had help, but for the most part, he built things himself. And that's a big difference, and that's something that you can kind of sense. And it just makes me appreciate it even more, again, going with the idea of somebody with a singular vision. And no, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was not a Lynch one. He did the Dune movie, he did Blue Velvet, he did Eraserhead, he did Mulholland Drive, you know, Twin Peaks, obviously, et cetera, et cetera. Elephant Man, he did the movie The Elephant Man. And I think that's a big difference between all sorts of artists, Damien. And it's not to say that Guy Maddin's stuff doesn't work because of that, because I do know, I've watched most of his movies, and some of them really do work for me. I think they're great. They're not exactly my wheelhouse, but yeah, I mean, and I think that's, again, where this ability of art to kind of tell you something about yourself is so apparent. It's just, for me, there's a certain style of art. When I end up finding something that really resonates with me, when I start looking into it, it usually ends down this path of this really very specific vision that an artist had, that an individual had, or that a small group of individuals had, and they wanted to present, right? The only directors I knew did soundtracks were John Carpenter and Robert Rodriguez. Yes, and they definitely are ones that do their own soundtracks, for sure. It's art that's part of the world and that comes straight out of one brain in a way. Yeah, absolutely. And that ability to know how to use the hands at your disposal, the people at your disposal become your hands, but really guiding them, which is why at one point I had a little bit of a thing with Nick. Just a very niggling kind of moment where it's this idea that a lot of people have that the director is the be all and end all. What are you talking about? The director doesn't do everything. The director doesn't do everything. I'm sorry to tell you all. I'm really sorry to break the news to you. The director is kind of put up on this pedestal, and for sure there's directors that do a lot of that. Lynch is one of them, for sure. But the idea that is prevalent when it comes to movie making, that the director is somehow this magical entity that is kind of doing everything and has his hand in everything and is doing everything. It's an impossible task unless you have the time and money and kind of confidence in yourself, and people have the confidence in you, especially if you're doing a big budget movie. Yeah, sure, you're getting to see drawings and stuff, and you're getting to kind of have a say in things, but there's a lot of hands in that pot. It's not just the director's singular vision. It's just plain and simply not. And that's just a fact. You can call it fake news, but it's just a fact. So again, it's why it kind of when I do see that, you can see someone's singular vision. Samuel Trejo, guess I've never seen a Lynch. Then you really should. You should see a David Lynch. And honestly, when I was living in Ontario, a friend of mine and I did weekly Sunday nights where we'd sit and have some scotch and we'd watch movies. What we did was we watched one director's entire catalog over the course of like a couple of months, depending on how many films they had, right from the beginning. So if you're brand new to David Lynch, I would honestly suggest start at the beginning and finish at the end. Watch his movies chronologically to see, because then you can also see an arc of a creative talent. You can see how his movies kind of developed. You can see where he started and where he went. Yeah, and I agree with Damien. I think you really would appreciate Lynch there, Samuel. I really think so. I at least expect the director to do a bit of editing for sure. And I think for the most part, the directors do end up sitting. Now, again, that just falls into, I know a guy like Lynch really has a very strong voice and a strong hand when it comes to editing. And I know that there's other directors that just sit in the room and they'll kind of watch the process and make sure things are going on. Make sure things are going kind of the way that they wanted them to. But again, that's all kind of a give and take, I think. I assume most films would become crap if there was input from tons of directions. And exactly, and that's where it does kind of get muddied. And you see that a lot in especially bigger budget movies or movies that become a flop. There's too many hands in it. A guy like Lynch's story that I had heard about him, whether it's true or not, I guess I will never really know because I've never been on his film set or anything, that apparently he doesn't allow producers and writers on his film set. In the pre-production phase, when everything is kind of gearing up, all those conversations happen. Once the filmmaking comes, from what I've heard, his kind of rule is, this is now my territory. This is now my part of my job. And I have no time for producers and other people to be hanging around, whispering in my ear. This is not your place. You have done everything up to this point. Now I am taking control from here on out, which I really admire, because I've worked on many movies where the downfall of the movie has been the 19 fucking producers that are sitting behind those monitors, all having their little conversations, all with their own life experience, trying to inject it into somebody else's movie. And I've seen so many movies. I've worked on so many movies that you see that moment happen, and you see the downhill slide of that venture, and it just ends in a steaming pile of shit, to be honest. Yeah, what I understood what you meant wasn't input from a ton of directions. Oh, I see. No, so I did read it wrong. I mean, obviously there needs to be other voices to keep people on focus, and that comes again with a personality, right? I feel bad you've never seen Eraserhead. You missed the beginning of his career. I mean, don't feel bad about it. I would strongly suggest seeing it and be prepared for a different experience. Even what I would also say, Samuel, specifically, it might be a good idea to watch The Art Life first and then watch Eraserhead, because The Art Life gives you a really nice view into his life as a painter before he made his first movies and how he kind of got on the path of making movies. Thanks, Damien. It was really nice to see you as well. Thanks a lot for tuning in and sticking around for a bit. So you can kind of see that development and then maybe jump into Eraserhead and watch that. I have only like 2 more minutes, but briefly, special person, can you talk about the appeal of Lynch's work? I don't know if I can. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to sound ridiculous. I don't want to sound cheesy, but that kind of thing really does come with the individual. For me, I like the look. I like the sound. And I know that I have some nostalgic, and it kind of brings it full circle. I do know I have some nostalgic elements in my love of David Lynch due to the influence that Eraserhead had on me at a young age. But there's just something about the worlds that he creates. And Paolo, how's it going? The worlds that he creates that just really work for me. I like that mysterious element. I like the kind of surreal nature to it. I like the fact that I can watch a scene and not know where it's going. I like the fact that something like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me scared the shit out of me in such a unique and kind of deeply disturbing way that just people can't do. You usually get a certain kind of horror. There's something when you can tap into some kind of psychological horror, or something that is not even psychological. It's sometimes something that you can't really explain why it just touches you, and it's just all created from that mood, from the look, from the music, from the ambience, from the way the people are acting, that sort of thing. I hate painters because they're dicks. I know, because I was a painter. Hilarious. Yes, he was and still is a painter. He still paints, and that's kind of where he came from. I know some painters as well too, and yes, some of them are dicks. I do not disagree with that. Yeah, and if you haven't absorbed enough of it, I mean, and that's the thing, like, I don't want to sit here and make this video and just kind of tell everybody that they've got to watch Lynch and love him because he's the best, because I totally get that it's not for everybody. My mom actually started watching Twin Peaks: The Return, and there's a character called The Arm, and when The Arm made its first appearance, my mom was like, what the hell am I even doing? You know, she just watched it because she watched the show with us at times, I think, when it was originally on, and she felt like it was something she should see. But she hit that moment, it was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. And that's completely understandable, because it can kind of come across a little like, what in the fuck kind of nonsense is this? And I totally see that. For me, it has a different effect, and that's where it comes to personal opinion on art in general, and that's a whole other set of videos. Anyway, I really want to finish eating now my cold breakfast. Thank you very much. I just had those thoughts. I wanted to get them out of my head. I did enjoy it. I'm looking forward to seeing the Blu-ray, because apparently there's a lot of bonus features on it that I would like to see, some behind the scenes stuff as well. Overall, though, I did like it. Did I need it? No, I didn't. Was there stuff that was boring? Oh, God, yeah, there was stuff that was tedious. Did he do it all purposefully? For sure he did. I never, and that's the thing with somebody like this, I just know that the missteps that he may have, even with Dune, sure, it's not the greatest movie, and sure, some of it did get out of his control. You still do get a sense of his voice within everything that he does, and I appreciate that. And especially something like Twin Peaks, I know that what was presented to us is what he wanted to present, and I applaud him for it. Quite an experience. Yeah. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody, for showing up. I really appreciate it, guys. It was nice to see you, and we'll talk to you.